Hey, I've been watching all these reviews for the movie Napoleon that just came out, directed by Ridley Scott, starring Joaquin Phoenix. And I got to tell you, the reviews are interesting. I haven't seen Napoleon, and I don't intend to, but it's interesting because everybody's saying the same thing. Like easily, um, 18 out of 20 reviewers are all saying the same thing. It sounds like a mess. Sounds Everybody's saying hey, it looks great. You know, um, Ridley Scott, who knows his job, he's been doing it since the '70s. Um, really brought the period of time to life. Um, with the costuming, the battle scenes, everybody's preaching up the battle scenes that they look good. They really capture the gore and the horror of war. Um, so good on Ridley Scott for that. But they it then gets interesting when you get into the acting because some people say Joaquin Phoenix did a good job. Most people are saying he didn't, and that his character's all over the place. 1 minute he's a competent general, the next minute he's a man-child sort of tantrum, and there's no consistency to the character. Um, and then they say that the story itself is a mess. Um, it bounces around too much. You don't get a sense of why what's happening is happening. I guess. And then they talk about how there's a 4 hour edit that probably fills in those blanks. I'm going to go on a limb and say you get more context to what's going on the longer version. But if we're watching in the theater, I guess it's 2.5 hours watching it all at once sake. It's hard, I guess you have to be a history aficionado about Napoleon to know why he's upset with a general in a given conversation, or an entire years long war gets glossed over in a very brief period of time, and you don't really get any context of what's going on. And then Joaquin Phoenix looks, he's getting up there in years, and he looks like an old man. Meanwhile, Napoleon was a young general, um, as generals go, and a lot of people saying the same thing, and correctly so. There's a reason why Napoleon is remembered. There's been a lot of nations with a lot of generals. There's been a lot of emperors over years, and you can't name most of them, but everybody knows, has at least heard the name Napoleon Bonaparte. And so when they just, what is the word display? When they portray him as a man child, and he looks 60, it's like not the right way to do this. And that's what everybody's saying. And everybody says the same thing. This would work better because the visuals look great. This would look better as a 8-part miniseries or a multi-season TV show. You're not going to pack in a guy like Napoleon and his array of accomplishments. I mean, the dude was massively successful for a long time as a general. He went through the French Revolution. There's a lot of depth and complexity to something like the French Revolution and why it was happening and who are the major players. So it reminds me of a really, really well done miniseries called, I think it was just called Adams or John Adams, about, the second president of the United States, John Adams, and him starting out as a lawyer, his relationship with his wife, his family. There was always a conflict with his career. And then he becomes a member of Continental Congress. The American Revolution happens. And then, follows him up until the time of his death, his relationship with Thomas Jefferson and Ben Franklin, adversarial nature with him and Alexander Hamilton. Holy crap, that car is loud. I'm in a parking lot. That's the way to do it. You need 6 or 8 or 10 hour and a half long, basically movies in a series to flesh all this stuff out. The idea that you're going to take Napoleon and that whole story is going to get told in 2.5 hours just ain't realistic. And so that's seems like the biggest issue with the film is just like, Joaquin Phoenix, he's acting like a man child. If he's 31 and he's immature in his relationship, okay. But when he looks like he's getting letters from AARP, and it's like, they have him all over the place in his personality, but at the same time, it's like, find me at 22 and then come talk to me now, and then come talk to me in 20 years. I'm not going to be the same emotional state. I'm not going to be the same maturity level. I'm going to grow. I'm going to age. I'm going to learn. I'm going to become even more bitter and hateful and resentful. So it's like, to do this in 2.5 hours, it's decades of a man's life, a man with virtually unparalleled successes and failures. Who else? There's a reason. So you're going to make the movie about Napoleon because he accomplished amazing things, whether right or wrong, fighting a war. And, they say estimated 5 million people died because of this dude. If you were to look at it as a nominal list, not good or bad, right or wrong, just, here's a list of his accomplishments. It's incredible. And then to spend half what I'm hearing, like half the film with his relationship with his missus, it's just like, do I give a shit? No, I don't. I want to see Napoleon in the French Revolution, in his role there. Him. So another example would be the Sharps series, Sharps Rifle, Sharps Mission. Richard Sharp starts out as a sergeant during the Colonial Wars, or the Napoleonic Wars, right? And then he makes his way up to, I think he's major by the end of the series, maybe lieutenant colonel. He gets a battlefield commission. He's a young second lieutenant. And he makes his way up the ranks through victory after victory and defeat. And the whole time, there's relationships with women. He gets married at one point, goes through a divorce. You can do that over the course of many episodes of something, not 2.5 hours. You're not gonna squeeze a story in there. So I think, if you're gonna, that was the first big misstep. Either the film had to be at least, it had to be like Lord of the Rings, part 1, part 2, part 3, to tell a lengthy story. To cram that in, and so even if they got the 4-hour thing, it's like, why did they do that? Because if the first one laid an egg, and you got a sequel coming out that nobody's going to go watch, you're out a huge amount of money. And so nobody wanted to make a 2-parter or a 3-parter. Lord of the Rings, there was going to be 3 parts. It had to be. You can't tell that story in 2.5 hours either. So I think it was something that was doomed from the beginning, and I don't think they should have just taken his early years as a young general, and and then he's trying to win a war, and yet he's got a wife at home. Okay, take a year or 2 of his life or something, and then if that's successful, make another one, or if the movie's successful, do a series. But whatever they tried to do here, whatever their goals and ambitions, it fell on its ass. That's what, like 18, 19, I'd say 18 out of the 20 reviews I've seen in the last few days, a couple were like, this is pretty good. And I'm watching that going, are you getting paid? Like, the Napoleon has fantastic acting. And then everybody else is like, yeah, Joaquin Phoenix dropped the ball. Like, it's confounding. Like, the action scenes are great, and people are like, I didn't know what was going on with the action scenes. They looked great. I didn't know what was happening. I wasn't able to follow anything. And then everybody, it's current year. It's communism USA, so everybody needs to shit on white men. And a guy like Napoleon, who is, love him or hate him in what he did, he's respected for his accomplishments by Western society, so we got to tear him down and portray him as a man-child and all this stuff. And Ridley Scott drank the goddamn Kool-Aid a long time ago. And it's just tragic because it's ruining movies and TV shows. So did Kevin Smith while we're on it. And it's It's unfortunate because everybody's saying the same thing. It looks fantastic. It's like, I would like to see a well told story that looks like this. And instead, we get the communist agenda and some befuddling decisions, and it's a narrative mess. So I might see it at some point, but I'm not in a sprint to get there. Um, but I'll leave it on this. It's just like, you got to tell a story of the man as a general on the battlefield and politics with reference to what's happening with his wife, or make the story. I think her name was Josephine. Make the story about Josephine where Napoleon's the secondary figure. But I don't. Here's a guy again conquered large swaths of Europe and had colonies all over the world. He went from a young fella to an emperor. And let's spend an hour and a half of the 2 hour and a half run on his relationship with his old lady. Why do they keep doing that? Because women didn't do anything throughout history. Guys got it all done. And we need to incorporate women and stuff and bash on dudes. It's just like, I don't want to see that. Not interested. But again, if you haven't seen Sharp's Rifles, Richard Sharp, who's an officer during the same period of time, the Napoleonic Wars, every episode he had a relationship with some lady. Either whether it was his wife once he got to that point, every episode he had a pretty girl that he had a thing going on with. But the bulk of the narrative was about winning a victory on the battlefield. Not what's the missus up to sitting at home making me a sandwich while I'm fighting a war. Because that's not interesting. It's not entertaining. The fact that he's always out and that causes a conflict in a relationship, you got to cover that because that's what happened. But I'm not hearing good things. So, Napoleon, let me know what you think in the comment section. If you saw it, if you didn't, if you're going to go see it, if you ain't. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.